So now we have Atiya Bose with us. She's the Executive Director, Aangan. Atiya, thank you for taking out time. You've been working on the issue of child protection for years. We've been talking about how the pandemic has had a massive setback for our children. Tell us about Aangan's work during this period and what have been your priorities?
Well, first of all, thanks very much, NDTV, for putting a spotlight on something that is really a very, very, very critical and serious issue. I think it's important to acknowledge right up front that the crisis of child protection, the crisis of children's safety and children being harmed is not a new crisis. You know, India has been a global leader in child marriage, in child labor, in child trafficking long before the pandemic hit. What the pandemic has done is that it has exacerbated this to levels where today we can actually have this national conversation, this, dare I say, this long overdue national conversation on a very, very, very critical issue. So, you know, really, thank you very much for doing this. So in terms of what Aangan has been doing, you know, I think our understanding, like the understanding of most people who work in child protection, is that vulnerable children come from vulnerable families. You know, children aren't like in a vacuum. So you really do have to focus on strengthening families, on looking at family vulnerability. At the time of this of the crisis, when government has been quite honestly absent, you know, in terms of protection issues, they've been very concerned, obviously, with COVID and with the other issues, as Tanisha pointed out. You know, treating the pandemic has caused all sorts of restrictions and has caused the removal of whatever scant government support there was for all of these issues. So a lot of our work has really always been, and intensified more so even now, on how, where children are, how do we have people there to protect them? Because child protection at the end of the day is not a bunch of laws and policies. Child protection is a human system. It requires bodies on the ground. Right. So our work has always been, you know, we work with about 6,000 women in the 1,100 villages and bastis where we work. And these are women who really have just said, they've joined us because they've said, जो हमारे साथ हुआ है, ये हमारे बच्चे के साथ नहीं होना चाहिए. Right. You know, so they've really just been working, you know, very hard to stop all of the things that have happened with them.
But Atiya, let me ask you this.
A key focus at the beginning, sorry?
Let me just ask you this. You've been working on demonstrating the power of the non-expert in a community-based prevention model to combat serious child harm. What is that power of the non-expert? Does that include each and every one of us?
Of course it does. The power of the non-expert is really the power of all. You know, what is the one thing, Vishnu, that we all have in common? We've all been children, right? That is the one thing that we all have in common. And if we allow ourselves to stop and think about what it means to be a scared and vulnerable child, dependent on other people, then we understand that we do know. You don't need to be an expert. You know, we function on the premise that protecting children is something that the police should do, is something that a psychologist should do, is something that somebody else should do. It's not. Protecting children are everywhere, and child harm is ubiquitous. It is everywhere. It is only when all of us are involved, when we are alert, when we agree to amplify the voices of children, of the exploitation that they face. That is how we leverage our power. So, right. You know, what can you do as a neighbor? What can you do as a brother, as a sister, as a father, as a community member, as a person of means, as a person who, you know, has access to things? There is something all of us can do, right? So we really believe that only when child protection becomes everybody's business, literally everybody's business, that children will be safe. And the way we do it is that we actually just work with, you know, women, mothers in very, very poor communities who've said that, you know, this is how we're going to, this has to end. So if people in very marginalized and very poor situations can actually say that we are going to stop the exploitation of children, then, you know, I think the point is very clearly that all of us can do it. All Absolutely. Of us have a very important role to play. What does that mean? It means when you see a child around you you don't look away and expect that somebody else is going to do something about it.
Right.
It means that you actually report it. It means that you talk to the child.
Yes.
It means that you find out about it. It means that you follow up on it. Yes, it will take a few minutes of your time. It will require you to make some calls. But that's what children need.
And I think that's a key point. The fact that, again, the question which we started on, you don't need to be an expert to be doing this. You don't need to be a child rights activist to be doing this. You need to be doing this as a human being, as a citizen and as a human being.
And you have to recognize, and you do have to recognize that it is a very, very, very serious crisis.
Yeah, no, it is.
And
indeed.
it requires all of us to make it our responsibility. Yeah. That's what's going to make the difference, pandemic or not.